There is a specific type of tragedy that happens to children who are labeled gifted too early. You know exactly who I am talking about. Maybe I am talking about you. In school, everything was easy. You didn't study, you didn't practice, you just understood. You absorbed information like a sponge. Adults called you mature for your age. Teachers used you as the example. You were the golden child with a future so bright it was blinding. But today, you can barely summon the energy to wash the dishes. You stare at an empty Word document for 3 hours, paralyzed by the fear of writing a single bad sentence. You watch your peers, the ones who struggled to read, the ones who had to work hard for a C-, pass you by in career and life. You feel like a Ferrari engine trapped in a broken chassis. You feel like a fraud. This is the psychology of the gifted kid burnout. And it's not because you became lazy, it's because you were set up to fail. The first psychological trap is the curse of the effortless. For most children, the early years of education are a training ground for struggle. They learn that if they don't understand something, they must apply effort. They fail, they try again, they succeed. This builds a psychological muscle called grit. But for the gifted kid, the walls were made of paper. You walked right through them. You reached the age of 18 without ever really learning how to learn. You relied on raw processing power. But eventually, life gets hard. The math gets complex. The job requires discipline, not just IQ. And the moment you hit your first real brick wall, you didn't climb it. You collapsed. Why? Because to a gifted kid, having to try hard feels like proof that you aren't smart anymore. Effort feels like failure. So instead of trying, you quit. Then there is the addiction. When you were young, your identity was built on one pillar, intelligence. You were the smart one. Every A was a hit of dopamine. Every good job was a fix. You became addicted to the cheap high of external validation. But here is the dark truth about the adult world. The real world doesn't give out gold stars. Nobody applauds you for paying your taxes. Nobody gives you a certificate for doing your laundry. When the constant stream of praise stops, your motivation engine shuts down. You don't know how to do things for the sake of doing them. You only know how to perform for an audience. And without an audience, you feel like you don't exist. This leads to the most painful symptom, the paralysis of potential. People told you that you could be anything you wanted. They meant it as a compliment, but to your brain, it sounded like a threat. If you can be anything, then choosing one thing feels like killing the other 99 possibilities. You become terrified of making the wrong choice. You are so afraid of being average at something that you refuse to start anything unless you can be perfect at it immediately. Psychologists call this a fixed mindset. You believe your talent is a static asset you were born with, not something you build. Therefore, every mistake isn't a lesson. It's evidence that your asset is depreciating. It's evidence that you are a fraud. So, you procrastinate. Not because you are lazy, but because if you don't try, you can't fail. And if you don't fail, you can keep the illusion alive that you are still that gifted child, just waiting for the right moment. So how do you fix a machine that was programmed to self-destruct? You have to kill the gifted kid. You have to mourn the potential you thought you had. You have to accept a brutal truth. Intelligence is not a virtue. It is just a tool. And like a hammer, it is useless if you don't swing it. You must give yourself permission to be average. You must give yourself permission to be a beginner. The smart kid is afraid of looking stupid. The master knows that looking stupid is the price of entry. You are not a failure. You are just a late bloomer in the school of resilience. The gold stars are gone. The audience has left the building. It is just you now, and that is the best place to start. If you are tired of carrying the weight of your potential, subscribe. We are figuring this out together.